Ms. Vizo, at some point through the text messages, you tell Ms. Truex that she is going to get her deposit back. And then at another point in time, you tell the plaintiff she's not getting her deposit back. You acknowledge that. So I'm kind of confused in terms of what the agreement was on the security deposit. Ms. Truex, you can tell me what that was.
The agreement was when the new tenant signed a lease that I would be no longer responsible.
And that new tenant signed the lease
on October 18th and handed her money.
Ms. Vizo, is that how you remembered the agreement?
So I know at one point we had thought that there were two interested parties so she could get her security deposit back. However, neither of those people were able to take it. So on October 9th, I told her I was still looking for somebody, and after I got it rented, I told her she wouldn't be able to get her security deposit back, and she didn't argue it or anything.
And why was that the case again?
Because I couldn't find anybody to rent it.
So initially you told her, yes, you're going to get the security deposit because you thought you were going to be able to rent the apartment?
I had like two leads, and then both fizzled out.
And then at some point you said you're not getting your deposit back, and why didn't you say something at that point?
Because I was still getting mail. I had requested mail from her, including utility bills that had not been forwarded. So I didn't think that was the time to start arguing. So I waited until that was all settled and had a good rapport with her, and then I started asking.
Ms. Vizo, what about the utilities? Ms. Truex never actually physically stayed in the apartment to accrue any of these utility bills. So why charge her for that?
I don't pay for people's gas or electricity. I solely pay for water, so she put all those things in her name. And I offered to pay for when I had possession of the keys.
Which was October 2nd, correct?
Until the new tenant took over.
Is that how you remember it, Ms. Truex?
Yes, but she never put them in her name, so they stayed in my name.
Up until when?
The new tenant put it in his name.
Right, but I paid utilities all until he moved in.
And there was a situation where, Ms. Truex, you tried to gain access to the apartment. Both of you called the police. I'm confused in terms of why the police were called in the first place. Because this just didn't seem like a situation where police needed to be involved.
Because I went to get my security deposit back. She refused. So I said, okay, then, let's just meet at the apartment. I'm still paying for it, apparently. So, I might as well go in. I mean,
But you're coming from Santa Barbara.
I did. I had to make all this effort to no avail because she would not keep her word.
Ms. Vizo, why did you call the police?
Oh, the truth was when she called and we talked on that day, it was a Sunday, and I was like, I get advice from the Apartment Owners Association. I was like, let me call them tomorrow and ask advice. What should I do? And she was not happy with that. So when she went over to the apartment, I had gone in and locked myself in because she was in an agitated state. She was banging on the door and pacing back and forth. That's why I called the cops.
Okay, Judge Juarez.
This situation was so close to being kind of the perfect interaction, and it just degenerated so quickly. It's so disappointing to see, because for a while, you guys were doing really great managing a really difficult situation. So what I want to understand, Ms. Vizo, is you said in your text message you get no refund as your lease officially ends on the 14th. And I assume there that you were referring to the fact that the new tenant, his lease didn't start until November 15th.
Yes.
Right? So even though you found him in October, that was the best you could do to get someone in at that point to start in November. But so here's the question. If her lease didn't officially end until the 14th, and I understand why that's your position, why wasn't she allowed access to the premises? It was her lease.
At that point, I already had a lease signed by a new person.
I understand that. But at the point when she is no longer being given access to the property, why is it fair for her to pay rent?
Because it's still, if you were to look at Exhibit A for the security deposit, it says any unpaid rent.
Right.
I understand that she wasn't living there, but that's still the rent that we lost trying to assist her in getting out of the lease.